All right, we've just started recording the session. Welcome everyone to the Startup Grind Power Hour. We will intro everybody for a moment before we get started, so we give people a bit of time to join. We can see people joining as we speak right now. So feel free to say hello in the chat. I can see someone's already getting in there and sharing their links. Thanks, JP. All right, everyone. So welcome. So this is the Startup Grind Power Hour, all about startup marketing. These Power Hours are essentially a chance for entrepreneurs to get together and to just power through a really interesting insight that will help their startup knowledge. And this time it's all about marketing. And we've got a really amazing guest here today, Dennis Volkmann, who is going to talk about his journey, what he's learned, and some of the really interesting insights that you should know about today in startup marketing. I met Dennis quite a few years ago now when I was running a startup accelerator, and he came in and talked to our entrepreneurs in the program, and he was amazing. And I always remembered him as the marketing guru that I absolutely had to bring back for another event. And here we are today. So everybody who is joining, welcome. I know that this is the Brighton chapter essentially hosting this, but I know we've got people from all over joining today. So feel free to share where you're joining from in the chat, what city, where you're at, why you've joined today, and what you hope to learn, because I'm sure Dennis will add that in. So what are you particularly interested in learning today? Sunny Newcastle, love that, somebody from Molo there. And for those of you who are new to Startup Grind, welcome. Startup Grind is the world's largest entrepreneur ecosystem, and we run events in over 600 cities across the world. So we're hosting here from Brighton. But like I said, we're all global citizens here in the entrepreneurship ecosystem, so people joining from everywhere. And we are all about sharing startup knowledge, making things easier to access for anybody around the world, and also about making friends, not contacts. So let's keep it friendly in the chat and be helpful and share best practice with people, and hopefully make some great friends as well as contacts here today. So the way it's going to work is we are going to have a short presentation from Dennis, and then we'll get into some Q&A. So I will enable the Q&A once Dennis starts, so feel free just to start pouring in the Q&A, and we will get to them towards the end as well. And Dennis, let me tell you a little bit about Dennis. I'm going to leave over to him to do the really detailed intro, but he has extensive experience in startups doing marketing, which is exactly why we've invited him here today. He's worked at Airbnb, Depop, Metal. He's now at Molo Finance. So I'm sure some really interesting insights he'll be able to share with you today. Dennis, hello, welcome. You're joining us from Singapore today, which is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, hi there. Hi, everyone. Yeah, hot, sunny, raining, all of the above, cloudy.
Yeah.
No, really happy to be here. I think that my intro will be very short. There are more interesting things to talk about. I separated 5 key learnings. Also, we'll be sharing frameworks, books. But the idea really is that everyone here can take something that appeals to them and use it, right? I think that's the most important thing. I'm very interested in the last part, which is really where we can have a conversation. Hopefully there will be questions and really direct, because marketing can be so broad, right? And even the group here, there will be people who are in marketing. There are people who never have done marketing. There are people who might be in the beginning of their career. There might be people who already have been working for a while and have different levels of experience, etc. So it will be really welcome to get this interaction, right? To get questions from you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree, Dennis. So please, everybody, feel free to just drop your questions in the chat Q&A, and let's get a good discussion going and really utilize this hour so we can come away with some really great action points for whether it's you're starting a business, you're a CMO, or whatever you're doing. I'm sure we'll gain a lot here. So Dennis, if you want to share your screen, get set up, and we can hand over to you.
All right.
And while you do that, let's see where people are joining from. We've got people from London, Sussex, Brighton, of course. I've got Newcastle, Burgess Hill. Welcome everyone. You can see some of our Brighton community peeps here, and a lot of new people as well. I wonder if anyone joining from outside of the UK here. Let us know. All right, we can see your slides, Dennis.
Fantastic. All right, so I'm just going to get to it. And if anyone has questions, just the chat is great for that. And at the end, we'll have some time. So basically, I'll do a very quick intro, go through those 5 key learnings, and then open up for a conversation. So Dennis, you'll see a few emojis there. I am Brazilian. I live in the US. Lived in London for 11 years, currently in Singapore. Some of my passions over there. But I'm here because I've been working for 20 years in marketing. The last 10 of them in startups, the last 5 of them in executive leadership positions. I am CMO right now, Chief Marketing Officer. I think for the sake of this conversation, what's more interesting are those logos that you see there. So right now I'm at Molo. I worked at Volkmann, Metal, and Depop. Early stage startups ranging from seed to Series B, and that's about 5 years. And the other roughly 5 years were at Airbnb. So I joined Airbnb when it was at Series B and stayed there all the way till Series F. So a huge amount of growth, different phases. I was there even before the rebrand when it looked like that, watching Blue Cloud. Went through different phases and different scopes of work, ways of working. Before that, I worked on agency side, client side. So even before working at Airbnb, my role was at Shell, which is completely different, right? But I really discovered myself and who I wanted to be, how I wanted to work in startups. I'm very passionate about that. So let's go to what matters, right? I have 5 key learnings to share, and then linked to those, I'll just share a few tools, or frameworks that I find useful, and a couple of recommendations, which are both linked to that. So right away, I want to start with something that is easier said than done, right? But it's about prioritizing. You're in this conversation because you're probably interested or in running your business, be it a startup or not. You're an entrepreneur, you have that mindset, you might be working with marketing or interested in marketing. The hardest thing to do is to prioritize. There are always more things that can be done than what you can do, right? There are always more possibilities than resources available, be it time, be it team, be it money, and it's really important to focus. So my recommendation really is that you have a top 3, right? And that within that, you know exactly what is number 1, so that if there's only one thing to do, that's what you do, right? That has to be critical for success. And then you can focus on 2 other things. The suggestion here is that you think about, okay, like this is something new, and this is something that already exists, but that will improve the business. A framework that I like when there are situations like this is a bullseye diagram. There will be slight variations in how that's called, but basically it's really good. Like you can have a list of things to do, and then you can just position your top 3 in the middle, then have 4 more, then have 5 more, etc. So this is something that you can actually use with so many things. But the key thing for you to take away, like if you have more, like you need to know what is the priority. You can have a top 3. If you have more than that, it will be distractions. You will be creating problems for your head because you'll probably be stretching too thin, losing focus, not doing things too well. And that's not only like individually, that's like across teams. Like if you have a tech team, product, operations, like it just scales up and gets more complex. Really, really hard to do this, but really important. So it might not even seem like marketing, but it has everything to do with marketing because, you know, you can have the best plan in the world, but if you cannot execute it, and I say that being like a guy who's more of a strategist planner, but I learned that the hard way. Now, two books that I did come across, and what I like about these books is, look, there are dozens, hundreds of good books out there, and I tried to get some that might appeal to different situations, right? Different people, different backgrounds. There are many books that are excellent, but that also might work best for big organizations, right? And I think that these are in some ways more personal, in some ways more relevant to smaller businesses, but even can add value to yourself, right? And these two books focus on one thing and how important and how amazing it can be if you achieve that focus. And Subtract is also a really interesting take on the science of doing less and really putting, that less is more phrase that you have heard somewhere sometimes, and explaining, like, there's a research and really thinking about like how society is all about adding things, right? You achieve things, you buy things, and how that has happened in history. So it even digs in deep into why we focus so much on that. And the next point is being able to articulate between how and what, right? And this is where some of my hardest lessons happened when I began working with startups, because working as an entrepreneur, working in a young startup means that you have to find a balance between the right thing and right now, right? There's that urgency. There are those deliveries that you need to make happen immediately. I can see that JP has asked about the slides. That makes me happy. I love slides. Yeah, I'll share them like Christina has them, and hopefully she'll distribute that. So the right thing versus right now, I really felt when I left Airbnb, because I think I was in a privileged position of, one, when I left Airbnb, it already existed for about 10 years, which means that there had been a lot of iteration. Two, there was so much talent, so many resources, budget, team. There was space and time to do the right thing. There was this, we were doing a campaign to enter Russia, for example. And I had 3 months to help create a proposal that would create the tactical strategy. And so, JP, I'm liking the questions. Keep shooting them. In some ways, it's like the urgent important, but I think it's more than that, because where I want to get to is, for me, the urgent important is a useful matrix for you to decide what you need to do right now. And for me, and I'm wearing here a bit my startup hat, but I already have been an entrepreneur and have had my own agency in the past. And I think that the right thing is the long term, which goes beyond the deadline, right? So when you think about, okay, like, what's my North Star, right? The right thing is you understanding what that means, defining it, validating and updating it throughout the journey, right? But having a very clear North Star. The right now is getting that and prioritizing what you need to do. I particularly have been working with OKRs. I don't know if you are familiar with these things, but it is a way of working which has been adopted by many companies and helps set things in quarters often, right? And I think that the urgent important matrix is really helpful for prioritizing things for the right now. I think that with business metrics, right, you need to have those North Star metrics. What is the metric that supports your vision? Like, what's the bottom line of the vision? What makes things happen, right? And then you can obviously break that down into quantitative and qualitative metrics, but those are things that shouldn't change, right? Those are things that are constant. That's the right thing, and that helps you understand, okay, this is where I need to get to, this is where I am, these are the market benchmarks, and this will help me track my progress, right? Which is different to the right now. The right now is understanding those metrics and using that to help you create targets with deadlines, right? Because there's an end date. This is happening right now. And then linked to that, you have the marketing KPIs, right? So the right thing, again, is about that system. It's about your strategy. Your strategy won't keep changing that much, right? And the difference between the business metrics and the marketing KPIs are the following. The business metrics will drive the bottom line, whether you're B2C, whether you're B2B. I think that this is what your business needs to achieve. The marketing KPIs will be tactical ways of measuring if you're doing things right. And I really like to have this distinction because you might be doing everything correctly, right? Maybe I'm running a social media campaign. There's amazing engagement. They're all like the metrics look amazing, but I'm not reaching the business metrics, right? Only the marketing KPIs. So that will inform me that probably I'm running things really well, but it doesn't make a difference, right? So I'll have to think of a different strategy. Now, if the marketing KPIs suck, then I know that I can do a better job. And maybe that can be the right thing to push the business metrics, but I need to sort this out first, right? I need to do marketing well. So I think this is particularly useful, even beyond marketing, right? Understand what drives the business and what are the tactical KPIs that help you assess if you're doing a good job against what you propose to be doing tactically in that period of time. You can revisit these slides at the end if it's useful. I'm just going to keep going. Data tracking, right? The right thing is for you to have clarity on what you need to know, have that vision. The realistic thing is to define reporting, frequency, how you're going to track things, collecting insights, and probably iterating, right? Because you won't get to your vision without some iterations and without some learning across the way. So by now, hopefully it's really clear, and I use this phrase a lot, the right thing right now, because it's just so much easier to articulate things with your peers, with your team, with your stakeholders, with your board, with anyone, right? Instead of talking about long-term, short-term. So I'm a big fan of that. Brand positioning, right? I think that it's important for you to understand where you come from, what you believe in, what's at your core, right? Define that and then evolve what it means and what it is as your business grows. And that needs to translate into guidelines, right? These guidelines won't change, right? Your brand positioning, like that's like who you are, right? And you might be in different situations, right? You might be at a party, you might be at a business meeting, you might be at the beach and wearing different clothes and speaking in slightly different ways and interacting with different people, but you're the same person, right? That's where the brand positioning comes from. And the right now is making sure that with everything that you do across all the different channels, all the different formats, that you have that consistent execution everywhere. Really tough to do that. Really tough because sometimes because of the lack of time, because of the lack of resources, because of unclear communication, or because of the lack of guidelines, it's complicated to do that. Or maybe because you even have guidelines, but the guidelines didn't foresee that you would need another channel or another format. JP, let me see, you have another question. What's needed from this right now and the future and designate time allocation for the needs? I'm not sure I'm able to process that question while I'm thinking, but I'll go back to that, JP. Values. So I don't know if you saw what Brewdog did this week, right? They did an advertising campaign positioning themselves against the Qatar World Cup. Thanks, JP. And it had an impact. It created conversations and then a lot of rage. Not rage, but like really people calling them out on their bullshit, because basically they stocked up Qatar hotels 3 months ago with their beer, They're going to pass you'll be able to watch the matches in their bars. They have all sorts of commercial agreements and things happening, which will completely leverage and take advantage of the World Cup, and then they're positioning themselves against it, which is a huge contradiction, right? So when you do marketing, it's really, really important to do what you say and say what you do. When it comes to values, I've already seen so many times. Like, I've been working for over 20 years, right? You see some beautiful posters on the wall, values that people don't even remember, founders don't remember, recruiters don't know, and that they don't put in practice, right? So I really encourage you, like, if you're gonna have values, like, believe in them, practice them, use them for hiring. I actually, when I'm hiring somebody for my team, I don't only do the technical part. I brief at least 3 people so that we cover all the values, and all of us are briefed on 2 values so that we assess things. So if teamwork is important, then somebody will be doing that on the side. If simplifying is important, then when we're doing a technical assessment of analytics, like, can this person not only do the math, but can they explain it simply, right? So yeah, I would really encourage that to be consistent across hiring, ways of working, customers. But it's very basic, right? Do what you say what you do. When it comes to customers, I think the right thing is for you to have a target audience in mind, right? You create a business because you believe that you will solve a problem to someone specific or to people who need something specific, right? And it's important for you to have a starting point. Actually, some people in this call already have worked with me on that and are incredible. Claudia, I see you. And the right now is being live, right? And interacting with customers, interacting with acquisition, gathering data, gathering customer knowledge, quantitative, qualitative. And that helps you calibrate, right? And define with iterations, because more data you have, the more interactions with customers, the more you should calibrate your business so that it is relevant. It still represents who you are, what you want to solve, but also becoming more and more relevant to people, right? And that allows you to do good marketing. I'll touch on a few marketing things in the next points, which will link to that. Yeah, I didn't do much work here. Those are 2 startup classics. They're not even very recent books, and probably you might have read them already if you're in a program like this or in a community like this. But yeah, I think that they still are quite good references and really strong and help you understand, like, even moving like from 0 to 1 and begin the concept of MVP, the concept of iterating, learning, evolving. So I think these are good books to read. These are good books to reread and references to carry with you. All right, I talked about values and hiring, right? And I mean, either you are in marketing and you're trying to work against a job scope that is huge, or you're interested in hiring professionals, right? So my advice would be careful not to oversimplify marketing roles, right? Oh, I need to hire somebody for social media. Like, what does that even mean? Is it strategy? Is it planning? Is it creating? Is it distributing? Is it managing channels? Or do I need a specialist in TikTok? Is it video? Is it influence? Like, there's so many things, and I'm just talking about social media, right? But one point that I also wanted to make, it's not only about the hard skills and the what, but who you're hiring. Like, if you're in this group, if you're interested in startups and running a business, it's who you're hiring. Like, what are the person's values and motivation? Can they grow together with your business? This is critical. This is vital. This matters more than everything else. Not the easiest thing to do. Not saying that their skills aren't important, but usually the who is overlooked over the what. So this is the temptation, right? Be realistic. You're not after a miracle. You're after talent that can help you with what you need to do, and that can grow you. And you know, it's it's a bit shocking to see how naive people can be and say that, oh yeah, I need somebody who can do brand and be creative. And when they say that, they mean like, yeah, you need to write, you'll need to create a design, you'll need to publish, you need to manage the channels, and you need to be analytical because you need to understand the metrics and you need to extract insights and you need to do reporting and the result is not a very good one, right? So this, might have delicious ingredients in this sandwich, but it's not a reasonable sandwich, right? And it happens very often, and I don't think it's with bad intentions. In most, maybe all cases, it's not with bad intentions. It's just really a lack of awareness, right? So if you know marketing, then maybe you already know this. If you don't know marketing, just eyes open. There are many layers, and you might be not solving your problem if your job description looks like that. So I was wondering if I would put this slide or not, but I thought, like, why not? I think that the important message here is not exactly the right team shape, but it's the fact that your team shape will evolve and will change, right? And with early stage startups specifically, it's very heavy on growth, right? Why? Because probably you have a proposition, you find product market fit, and then you need to grow. And how do you grow? Usually, you get people who understand about growth, whether it's paid, whether it's organic, whether it's through other channels and other ways, but brand and other related functions that can be linked to scaling, which is a term used very loosely, can be part of the mix, right? As you grow, as you reach milestones, you will need to balance out more growth and brand. I'm going to go into that in my next point, but also what I call media and marketing operations, right? So brand and growth work together, achieving different things, but part of the same funnel. Media and operations is more about connecting everything. It's really the bridge. Media will help you set the context and understand performance, and improve things, right? And the operations will keep things running smoothly, and it's really necessary to have that layer as your team grows. We can get back to this if it's relevant. I'll just carry on and talk about these books. So I love this book. I'd probably talk about it a little bit too much, but if any of you did the insights evaluation with the 4 colors, it's linked to MBTI, and I think this book is brilliant. Surrounded by Idiots, it teaches a lot about yourself. I think it gives you a lot of awareness of how people are different, and very importantly, like when you're thinking of a way of solving something, it's usually, well, there's a right way and all the others are wrong. And no, actually, there are several right ways and several styles. But it's really interesting to see how people perceive things, right, and how they act and what's important with these 4 colors. And if that works for you, then you can go to this red book. I don't like the title. I would have made a different choice, but what that is a layer which focuses a lot on work, right? Be it you being a manager, be it you not being a manager and being an employee, but it really dives in a little bit deeper, and it also starts blending the colors and going into more professional situations. So which do you suggest to start with for startups? So the white one, the Surrounded by Idiots, is the first book, and then there are, like, it works. It's so good that it's like a Netflix series that should have been 3 seasons, and they extended to 8. So there must be like 4 or 5 books. I just recommend these 2. But if you're reading one or giving it a chance, go for the white one. Surrounded by idiots. Cool. Let's talk about brand and growth, right? Because there are similarities, there are overlaps, but both require different inputs and timings and will produce different outputs as well. Obviously, these are two very big areas. I won't be talking about everything, right? I'm not presenting the absolute truth of brand and growth, but I think that what I'm trying to achieve here is just a clear distinction and a reference for you. So let me start by oversimplifying. Think of performance marketing as a sprint. Think about brand marketing as a marathon, right? They're both runners, they're both racing, but very different styles, right? Where do I want to get with this? So let's think of a classic marketing funnel. This you'll see funnels in different shapes, and you'll see people who talk about funnels versus loops. But let's look at this funnel, right? So startups will start at the bottom, right? It's about conversion. You want to find people. You want to identify traffic with high intent that will convert into a lead, and that lead will go into your customer journey, into your sales pipeline, become a customer, right? So this is where you're thinking about volume of approved leads, conversion rates, cost per acquisition, right? This is where you see a lot of search ads, where you see those PPC acronyms, or mixed marketing, some SEO, lots of A/B testing, CRM, right? Your goal is to find high intent traffic. I wrote here online, it doesn't have to be, but usually it is, and transform that person into a qualified lead at a competitive cost per acquisition, right? This type of communication is more promotional, more direct, when possible, personalized, right? You're identifying people, traffic with a very distinct behavior, with a very clear demand, or a demand that is as clear as possible, and bringing them into your pipeline. Now, what you usually go through as a path, as a journey, as a young startup is that you focus on growth and you begin with that area and you optimize it. And then at some point, you start saturating your possibilities, your channels, and you need to expand. You need to reach out to more people, right? That's when you start looking at brand. It doesn't have to be that way. It's not the rules of the game, right? But it's very common for it to happen in that order, right? And when you start thinking about brand, you're basically going all the way to the top, right? The broader you go, the more people there are, but also the less high intent to convert straight away, right? So when you're thinking about awareness, you're basically going out to the market, right? You usually have a total addressable market, and you're thinking, okay, like, do these people know that my brand exists? Right? Because if they don't know that you exist, they definitely will not convert, right? So you're thinking of your first impression, right? The goal is to make target audiences. So the target audiences are relevant audiences, right? Today, I work at Molo, and Molo does mortgages. We help people buy a house. I'm not going to be targeting teenagers, right? There are very, very few teenagers who can buy a house, and probably they might need authorization from their parents because they would have the money. Just trying to make a joke that's not very funny, but like, know who your target audience is, right? So you want to make them aware of your brand with brand marketing efforts. The communication is usually more emotional because you want to inspire people with possibilities, right? It's different from a paid search ad where I'm looking for, like, if I'm looking to buy a red t-shirt, you know, I Google it and I'll get an ad with a red t-shirt on that. It's different, right? And right now I'm talking about mortgages. So if I want to do a brand awareness campaign, I'm going to talk about people and, you know, the dream of buying a home, and a very different tone, with a very, very different narrative and storytelling than I would be able even to create in a search ad that's triggered for very specific search. Right. Key channels usually include, but aren't only, like PR, social media, events, brand awareness campaigns, And this breaks up into so many subcategories, right? But what you want to do here is be able to measure reach and frequency, right? So basically reach is how many people you are able to reach, and frequency is how many times that same person will be exposed to your ad, your experience, to that touch point, right? Because once is not enough. Very commonly, if you're doing serious brand campaigns, you will probably try to get a frequency of 3 to 5 times. That's the reason why you see so many of the same ads, right? Because it actually takes you several times being exposed to an ad to even notice it. Then once you notice it, you might notice it more than once, but that's what helps you remember, right? The reason why you want people aware is that if they know that you exist and if they have a positive perception, when it's time for them to make a purchase, then they might consider you, right? Which is exactly what's there in between. So I'm aware that the brand exists, right? Consideration is, okay, I know it exists, but is this brand for me, right? It's a different moment. It's a different articulation. So here, like, actually there's even a typo here because I use this framework and I put visit our website. It doesn't have to be, it can be download your app, it can be visit your website, but it's like, what is the, like, what opens the door, right, to your customer journey. And here the communication starts being more functional, sometimes educational. What's really important for you to understand is what are the drivers and the barriers, because this person already knows that you exist. They are considering you. And if they aren't going straight to conversion, there's a reason, right? Do they need to read product ratings? Do they need information on how it works? Do they need, what sort of validation, or what kind of trust are they looking for? What clarification? So really understanding what are those drivers and barriers is helpful, because then it helps you push people to conversion. This is where things get usually heavier with content, guides, and how it works, and all sorts of formats, right? Text, video, etc. Sometimes it's really useful to have events with specific niches as well. And SEO can be very useful because SEO can also be very broad, right? So these three work together, and obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, but if you realize that people who are in the awareness stage go straight into conversion, just let them go through, right? Don't hold them back. Just make it simple, easy, and convert. I'm going to carry on, or else we won't have time to talk, which is the most important. 2 books. I'm not even the biggest fan of The End of Marketing, but I think it provokes in positive ways. And it's quite focused on social media, which I think is something relevant to all of us, present in our lives and present if you're doing business. And I also like the utility book, which is a lot based on helping and not hype, right? What you want marketing is to be relevant, right? And I think that both of these are quite a good balance. There's so many good marketing books, but what I wanted to bring to you is also a different flavor. So lastly, marketing is business, right? In 20 years, how many times have I heard art and science? Like, too many. But seriously, you're not an artist and you're not a scientist. You're doing business. Marketing is very commercial, and if you want to be an artist, you're probably in the wrong place. So what I thought would be useful for this moment, and even to like wrap up these 5 points, is a framework that I use to connect marketing to the business. Right. So at the business level, what you can expect, or what you should be considering, is to really have clear business goals with the objectives, targets, deadlines, pricing and criteria around your product, understanding your competitors, having those guidelines that allow you to do like the right now, right? There's a brand strategy that supports that. even if it's a very simple one to begin with, right? But that's where you start from, where you have your vision, purpose, values, USP, branding, right? All of these things are important, and I would say that they're really important inputs for you to be able to do anything well with marketing. If you do marketing without knowing these business inputs, you might be doing good marketing that will generate no results. And marketing is business, right? So you need to know everything that's in this orange section. And if that's unclear, then push for it, right? Whether you are the person who needs to figure that out, or whether you're working with somebody who needs to figure that out, work with them to get clarity around this. So I think that once you have the business goals, it's really important for you to understand who you're going to reach out to, right? Before anything else, right? What are the characteristics of that audience? What are their behavior, their perception, which is super important, right? What you're selling is not for yourself, it's for them, right? So understanding their perceptions, their media consumption, all of this is really useful because it helps you make better choices, right? The more you know about your audience, the better choices you'll make, and the more relevant you can be to them and create good experiences to them, which will create really good connections between them and your business, right? And then that breaks up into a more creative part, right, which is linked to the brand strategy and to that audience, right? So what's the right branding? What's the right format and experience, right? Thinking about channels and moments. And then there's a part of context, which is very linked to media, if you remember that team structure. But this is something that you can exercise from day one if you're aware of it, right? Think about context. Context it's so meaningful. It's basically, okay, like, who's the right person? What's the right message? What's the right place? What's the right time? What's the right cost? Right? Even if you articulate answers to these questions in a very simple way, it's already better to start from there than just ignore that or not be aware that context is so important, right? And then lastly, that translates into performance, right? The business results that you're driving, the tactical KPIs, which I explained earlier, the difference between both, right? So that you know if you're doing things right and whether that's driving results or not. And then how that's going to translate into reports, and how that can be used for optimization cycles, because probably you'll be looking at an approach that you can iterate and improve. So 2 books that I think can help you find that balance, right, between having the business references, and I pulled a little bit more to the brand side because this is marketing session, is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. When he introduced the Golden Circle in 2009, that was impactful, and I think it's a very good reference. I think it's fair to say, like those really good Netflix series that could have less seasons, maybe he shouldn't have 10 books, but he brings some really good things quite often. And I think that this positioning book, this is probably older than all of us, maybe older than some of us combined together, but it is a classic. It is a really strong reference, and also one to consider. So that's what I had in terms of slides. I would love to talk, get questions, see what might be relevant for you, and where the remaining time can go.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ellis. So much value in there. I've written so many notes down, and I've got a few questions for you as well. But I know there's already something in the Q&A from Patrick, if we want to get to that first. I don't know if you can see it, but he says, in the marketing funnel, should social media still be considered as part of the mix for growth, or does that largely depend on the type of product or audience? What do you think?
So social media is tricky because it can be articulated across the funnel, but I would say it's more towards the top than the bottom. But it really depends on the type of industry, the type of product and audience that you are. And I think that the way that social media is and has been transforming, it also is so present in people's lives. The ways that influencers can be super successful means that can be super effective as well. So a classic way of positioning social media is one that is more linked to awareness, one that is more connected to consideration. I would use that as a starting point. But if it works for growth and it can be evaluated like a growth channel, why not? Right? And what do I mean evaluated by growth channel? Like growth for me translates into high intent. It translates in very, very clear metrics of, is this converting? How much? How much can I improve it? How much does it cost? And does my CPA, which is the cost per acquired lead, link to my cost per acquired customer, which is CAC? Sorry about the acronym, but what I really mean is, if social, like any channel, not only social media, that is considered growth, needs to be under the growth metrics, under the performance marketing metrics, and be competitive. If social media can be that, then yeah, for sure use it. But what I see too often and have seen in my experience is people pushing for performance marketing metrics in social media and failing, and then not being able to see the value of social media when it comes to awareness and how much help it can give with awareness and consideration. And in a more mature organization, in a way of doing marketing, that can have tremendous value, right? So that's the only thing that I would be careful with, not creating too many expectations for social media.
That's great, thank you. I mean, I love the way that you defined marketing as being a business function, because it is essentially, it's how you grow a business, right? And a lot of the stuff that you share today is something that, regardless whether you're in the marketing function, it's just pure business strategy, isn't it? And it's so key to get right. I really wanted to ask you about, over your time in the different companies that you've worked in, do you have any stories to share in terms of, marketing gone really well or marketing gone wrong? Like anything you can share with us in terms of like mini case studies of things we can learn from?
Yeah, for sure. People love the Airbnb story, so why don't I try and dig into that? I think that, it's really funny. I was seeing a campaign from Booking.com last week, and it felt very much like Airbnb in 2015. The music, the narrative, the storytelling, and like a bit of a concept of like living there, not visiting there, of a traveler versus a tourist. And we had tremendous success at Airbnb back in 2015, 16, 17, and beyond. But that's the period that I really was active with the campaign. And the reason why we went into doing these brand campaigns is because we measured our awareness in market. And by then, we already had a track record, which was, we were very proud of. Airbnb had grown a lot by 2015. It still was more of a startup than it is today, than it is not today, but still. But we realized, for example, that in the UK, brand awareness was around 5% against the total addressable market, which meant that 95% of the people who traveled and that could be using Airbnb didn't know it existed. So that's why we started doing the brand campaign. And then what we did learn, like two things came from this transition from digital marketing, growth, performance, and transitioning into brand marketing. One, we had habits, which were bad habits for more traditional brand marketing, from digital, where digital can be very last minute and very dynamic and changing and it's super quick. Programmatic and all these things weren't even what they were nowadays. But the whole point was we were used tweaking things and booking things and doing things very last minute because we could and kept iterating, etc. When it came to booking physical media, like TV in the UK, if you don't, like, you need to do it at least a month before. If you do it in the same month, you pay penalties, right? And if you make a mistake, you need to do iterations. It costs money, and there might just not be inventory. There are all sorts of different habits, right? So that was a really important learning for us because there were so many inefficiencies and so much cost that could have been avoided with iterations, fees, all sorts of things. So it took us 2 or 3 campaigns to get at a really good place. And then another that we realized was we were doing these ads that worked really well and that people loved and but they didn't have a really strong brand recall. And we realized that we had to show the product a bit more. We had to have a stronger end card with the brand, with a call to action, and just be more consistent throughout the storytelling. Right? It was very creative, but it wasn't very effective. At that time, Claudia and Yi, who are here in the call, actually worked with me in some of these moments. But I had a position at Airbnb for a period of time where I was responsible for media in Europe. So not only UK, but France and Germany and across a number of other ad hoc countries. And I had to be the bad guy sometimes because talking with the brand managers, we were doing the same campaign to the same people, and it was a brand awareness campaign, right? So it all goes back to the business goal. Like the campaign was brilliant, but if you're targeting people who already are aware of you, then you're not really doing what you have to do, right? You'll do a brilliant campaign that won't achieve anything because you're communicating to the same people in the same places, right? So things like that are important lessons that only happen with iteration.
Yeah. And so this is the thing, like, I think especially the earlier you are and the more new the thing that you're working on, would you say it's less about knowing the right thing to do in marketing, but more about trial and error and just trying and doing different things?
I think you have to be very comfortable, right? And you don't need to do huge campaigns to do that. I really think that it's important to take risks. And it's important to use the knowledge that you have available. If you don't have internal data, use external data, right? Use Google Trends, use the Answer the Public. There's this brilliant website that gives you qualitative insights. If you Google Ask the Public, Answer the Public, one of those, you'll get the website, and you can do 3 searches a day for free. Right? So start them well. And actually, one of the things that I could have shared today even is like an AAR, which is an after action review. I think it's really important to do those so that you are able to understand what worked, what didn't work, what can be improved. Also to pass that knowledge across to new team members, or just to remember things a year later. It's incredible how many things do happen, and if you don't document these things, they're just gone. Right, and this can and should be applied to the most creative things, right? Just one last story before we run out of time. So there was this really successful platform as well at Airbnb, which was a night ad. So they're a night ad at the ski station, or at an aquarium, or at the catacombs in France, or in the middle of the desert, or in a museum, all these things. And it all started because there was this bookstore in Trafalgar Square where this person was reading a book, and he was so into the book that he didn't realize that the store was closing. And he was on the 2nd floor in a corner, and then all the lights went out. And by the time he reached the door, everything was locked. Everyone was gone. He was stuck. He was panicking, and he tried all sorts of things. Nothing was working. He tweeted. His tweet went viral, and he was stuck in a bookstore. And he was found and saved after a couple hours. But then the tweet went viral in a way that, like, people are like, "Oh, I wish I was stuck in a bookstore all night," etc. Blah blah blah. And we started reaching out. It was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. I cannot even remember the name of the bookstore. It's a really big, famous one. I cannot believe I don't remember it. But the whole point was like something not so good happened. It triggered a conversation, and we just jumped on top of it and like, let's do an Airbnb, let's put air mattresses and find people who want to participate in that. And the bookstore was like quite cautious, right? The PR team was trying to avert a crisis and everything, but it happened. And what's cool about that is that it actually created a formula that we could not only promote all sorts of incredible experiences, right? So we did a night at the Maracanã Stadium. We did a partnership with Nike and did it at an event where marathon runners were going. We did something with Audi in the middle of the desert. We did something with a Van Gogh theme in a museum in Chicago. This opened possibilities to something much bigger because we jumped on an opportunity. We learned what that meant, right, and realized the potential, and then just transform that into something that could be executed over and over.
Love that. That's really cool. And where we've got a few more minutes left, I know that somebody asked about top marketing tool, and you mentioned Answer the Public, which you shared. Thanks for that. That's a Brighton founded company, I believe, that one. Yeah, any other tools or any kind of what current trends are? I know there's so much going on and it depends on your business, but is there anything that as an early stage business you should be thinking about? Like before it was like, in the last decade, everyone's like, you've got to get on your SEO and you have to have all the right words on your website, all that kind of stuff. What is the thing now? Like, what should everybody be doing now? Or what should you definitely have in your marketing strategy if you can?
I'm sorry if this is not a very good answer, but just use your brain. I think there are so many good tools and so many smart AI things. I mean, create a Google Ads account, even if you're not running ads, just to use the keyword planner. Use Answer the Public, use Google Trends, learn how to use Google Trends, learn how to cross two things on Google Trends, learn how to use different keywords with different years so that you can see trends between the years with the same keyword. That's a small trick that people don't realize, but do desk research. Do desk research. We ran a campaign in Russia where I don't speak Russian and I don't know much about Russia, but I just found articles with our competitor, ran it through Google, was able to translate what the CEO was saying, what results they were celebrating, how they were positioning things. And that was qualitative insight that was really important for us to run a campaign in Russia in 2017. And that had really, really strong results. And a lot of the work that we did came from references that were out there and were public, available in the internet. I think that, sometimes there are people who say like, I shouldn't be worrying about the competition. And that wasn't about worrying about the competition, but it was realizing that in the market that we were away, right? After Crimea in 2014, Airbnb had pulled back, and Booking.com was actually saying that, oh yeah, our customers love to travel to European cities because they like to travel like a local and live, in homes and apartments. Like they were basically translating what we did, and it was like, look, they're doing this, fact, right? And then you can cross that with data, with keywords and other things that is really helpful.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much data out there. You could literally just sit at your computer and figure out a lot and get a lot of trends that you need to start creating really great marketing strategy. I love that. Dennis, thank you so much. I think we will end it there. And to everyone who has joined, thank you so much. We will share the slides after this and the recording will be available as well. So get started. Make sure you get in that hour to actually implement some of the stuff. I know what it's like. There's lots to read, lots to do. So make sure you protect that time. Dennis, thank you so much. It's a wrap.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Connect on LinkedIn. See you around.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thanks.